Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm the Campaigns Director for In Defense of Animals, and we are thrilled to have you here for our very special Tule Elk Town Hall. And we have our Tule Elk expert here with us right now, who is our Tule Elk campaign consultant, Jack Gescheidt, and he is here to tell us more. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Lisa, and welcome everyone. Of course, my cat just meowed to go out now. Perfect timing, Tulsi. Thank you. Stay. Do you want me to take it away, or do you have more intro to say?
Yes, actually, let's go ahead and have you. Um, we're just so glad to have you here. For those of you who haven't joined one of these before, this is a town hall. So this is really a nice opportunity to have a discussion and to learn from our in-house expert, Jack Gescheidt, who's here with us. So I think, yeah, you can certainly take it away. That'd be fantastic.
Okay. Thanks everyone again for being here and for caring about the elk. I kind of smile at the term expert. I know experts, and Jack, you're no expert. What I am is a very much a lover, and I mean that in the metaphorical sense of elk, and a big mouth for the elk. I'm also still getting used to the Zoom world, even though, of course, I've been here with all of you folks. But I much prefer, because I'm old enough to remember, meeting live in person in actual town hall settings, where I'm on a stage and there's people and we can go back and forth and I can see you all. So for me, it's frustrating. I guess welcome to the world of TV, where you're all out here and care about elk as I do, but I can't actually see you. So welcome to Hollywood and Zoom screens. And our purpose today, which is to have all of you get a little bit more informed about how you can right now help the Tule Elk at Point Reyes National Seashore. And the format today is I'm going to talk for another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to show you probably 10 minutes of images, and then come back and talk to you again for another 10 minutes, and then we'll take questions if you have any. So right now there's an opportunity through June 5th, which is, let's see, gosh, I forget, is that a Wednesday? I even forget the day of the week it is now. Yes, it is a Wednesday at 11 o'clock is the deadline. Pacific time, California time, where I and the Tule Elk are, to give the Park Service your opinion. And at this point, politely, since they've done an amazing thing, which is to say we're actually making a formal proposal, part of a NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act process, to remove the Tule Elk fence. And that's what you see behind me. I want all the clutter there, but also, let's see, here's another picture behind me. And another. So I want to do a couple things, and Lisa, I'm going to ask you to help me to remind me too, is some people can stay for 5 or 10 minutes and they've got to go. Other people are going to hang till the end or show up halfway through. Welcome to the world of the virtual town hall. So I want to repeat a few basic things, which is you can right now disappear knowing that you can take 5 minutes to participate in this process and tell the National Park Service, yes, I support your alternative B for boy, out of their ABC proposals. If you read them, you'll see that, but it's very simple. Alternative B is to take down the fence, release the largest herd at Point Reyes Seashore of the 3 herds. And then in addition, we're asking people to tell the Park Service, even though they're not actually asking for it, to remove the cattle operations as well. The cattle is the problem in the park. Private cattle operations in a national park, public land being exploited for profit. Welcome to the modern world. And at Point Reyes, one of the additional victims of that private abuse of public land is that the elk, the wild animals in a national park, are fenced, confined, and as you probably know if you're here, they have suffered terribly as a result, and they will continue to suffer even after the fence comes down, but it will be definitely an improvement. Right now, the other thing that's going on in the park is a lot of water in the park. There has been a lot of water. There's still cool temperatures this year, so the elk have food or forage, which is vegetation, and water galore right now, which is wonderful news. And you know, as activists, as I am campaigning with In Defense of Animals and for my own TreeSpirit project, there's all sorts of bad news, and it can be very frustrating. But this, folks, this really is a win. The National Park Service, of a giant federal bureaucracy run out of Washington, D.C., has reversed course, saying, yes, they are now officially recommending to take down the fence, which sides with us. We've been pushing on them the whole time. So we do want to celebrate that, even though we, of course, simultaneously march on to the next goal, which is to get the cattle out. So let me mix it up for my talking head and share my screen. And can Lisa, can you all see?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. That would have been funny if no one was there the entire time. Wait, what's that? Once again? So, bonus points. If you know that that is a bugling male Tule elk in the rut. That's a whole separate fun talk as well, but I just want to bring them into this conference we have. And bear in mind who we're fighting for, working for, advocating for, which is these beauties. 2 boys and the rest girls in this picture at Point Reyes Seashore. This is looking kind of from the southern end of the reserve north to Tomales Point, which comes to a point there in the distance, kind of lower center of the frame over the elk's heads. And where is that? The top left red arrow is Tomales Point. For those of you who don't live near here and kind of hear about it but don't know it, I think it's always good to start with, where are we? If you look bottom right of this picture, San Francisco places us just north of that famous city of under 1 million people, about 20 miles north, Point Reyes National Seashore. And to give you another example of what the shape of that peninsula looks like, which is also indicative of the problem at Point Reyes National Cesspool. Currently now we're down to about 4,500 cows. Used to be 5,000, maybe more, but with more regulation, or at least oversight by us citizen activists, they are slowly cleaning up their act and taking down the fence as part of that. But that is still a prodigious amount of, as I like to say, 8 million gallons per year of cow feces and urine in the park. Yum. And that won't go away just because the fence is down. It remains a problem, which I'll get into again briefly here, just a quick overview. But so 4,500 cows, and again, I wish I was with you folks. Does anybody know how many elk overall? There are 3 herds in the park, but how many elk compared to 4,500 cows at Point Reyes Seashore? And this wonderful little map by rondaluluart.com, done for Defense of Animals, shows the answer to that question down below in the center. It's about 700 elk now, 702 by the official Park Service count done at the beginning of this year. And the brown area is where the cattle are, which is an entire third of the park. And I just wonder, I wish I could see a show of hands, folks, and I'm not asking you to because I can't see you. But how many people know that it's a third of the entire park, 28,000 acres taken over by the cattle industry, and those 3 yellow patches, light yellow patches, are where the elk are. The largest herd, about 315 inside the reserve now. To the very north, the top of this picture, center left and top, where there are 3 elk to represent the 315 elk in there. And you see the little badminton tennis net there that represents a 3-mile-long fence that goes from the Pacific Ocean to Tomales Bay. Closer up, the same thing. And I realize I love talking this stuff and sharing it with folks, so I could go on, but I do want to keep this short and get to business here, which is to make a public comment to the National Park Service before June 5th. And that is said fence, which doesn't look like a badminton court when you get up close to it. It's called woven wire. It's 8 feet tall and stretches 3 miles long. Another view of the same, and you see the sign for the so-called reserve, which makes you think if it's a place where elk are reserved, but it's a place where elk have died because it's basically a large fenced compound. Another view, I took this photograph basically atop the fence, and again to the larger point here of why what's going on at Point Reyes is bigger than what's going on at Point Reyes. It's indicative of what cattle do to land everywhere, which is, and again, no fault of the cows, as I'm reminded by my fellow animal lovers in Defense of Animals. Cows are exploited animals, and that's a whole talk there as well, but this is what they do to the land. Look on the left, and this is, mind you, a small, organic, local, historic dairy, award-winning dairy in Point Reyes National Seashore in Marin County, as good as it gets, folks. And look at the right side of the picture where the elk live and what lower impact they have, and of course fewer numbers. But it's not a large animal that's overfed and overwatered so they can take its meat, its body, its flesh and milk, and basically exploiting an animal, which also destroys the environment. There's so many reasons to give up eating meat, folks, or at least eat a whole bunch less. So, the news, the National Park Service announces availability, fun bureaucratic word, availability of comments and update for the Tamales Point Area Plan, or as they like to call it in bureaucraties, the TPAP at Point Reyes National Seashore. And there's a red arrow down there. I'm going to zoom in on that. And based on the review of public comments and internal scoping, blah, 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 Park Service has identified a proposed action for the Tamales Point Area Plan. And that is including removal of the Tule Elk fence and also the temporary water systems. We're going to get into that or not, maybe in the questions. And again, why? Why this big opportunity? Why am I going on about it in these town halls? This is the third, and we're going to have a fourth probably in August, which I'm also excited to tell you about perhaps later if there's time. Why? What happened? Who did this? Why the change? And the answer, we the people, folks, and that includes you, people who care about the elk. Our voices actually matter. So this is, as I say, a victory and an example of how activism and the little people, the citizens of America, of the United States, can make a difference, can actually change federal policy. It often seems futile, but it can happen, and it's happened here. We did a lot of actions in the park. I'm just doing a quick overview. Marching on the road at the fence. We got media attention, newspapers, as well as television. And a lot of it focused on, what's wrong with cows anyway, which is what I've touched on. It's not the poor cow's fault, but look at the regenerative agriculture on this wonderful farmland. Yum, as I like to say. It's just beaten down to dirt. These poor guys are stuck there with tags in their ears, moved around, fed, pushed around, forced to have more baby cows, which are taken from them. It's just a nightmare. And I know I'm focused on elk, but the problem with elk at Point Reyes is because of what's done with these poor guys. So cattle industry also is pollution of land, air, and water. Cows wander and they go into the streams, which they're not supposed to do, but surprise, the ranchers don't keep a tight rein on them. And so they poop directly into the water, and that contaminates the waterways for fish, for people, for animals who drink from it. So you get signs like this, which were actually put up. And I love this, even here, my favorite word apparently this Zoom is bureaucracy. Water contact may cause illness. Bacteria levels exceed health standards. Huh, well that sounds pretty bad. Don't go swimming, it shows. It says the same in Spanish, of course, but why? Like what? It doesn't explain it. It just happens to leave out the cause of the water pollution. Well, we fixed that in a hurry. How do you like this improved sign? Water contact may cause illness. Fecal bacteria levels from cows exceed health standards. Kind of more to the point, which is why they don't have copywriters like me and environmentalists write these signs. And these are some of the fecal indicator bacteria that grow in the water because of the fecal. Not good. And then, of course, we activists, a whole group of people, including in Defense of Animals and other groups as well, put up a lot of money and funded our own studies to prove it, to have documentation. You need angry, strident voices, and you need science, and you need citizens, and you need letters, you need all of it to get stories like this. Sewage dumping found at ranches. In addition to the cattle sewer, the cattle manure sewer, there's also the human manure sewer, because of course the ranches are dilapidated and hurting for business because they're cheap mofos, even though they're supported by you, the paying public, and the public doesn't even know that. So that's my little rant, my mini rant on some of what's rotten at Point Reyes National Seashore, which has potential to be cleaned up right now. And how can you help today? to get this guy, this fence down, and this guy, actually he's on the wrong side of the fence, which is a story in itself, but he wants to go back and forth, as elk do, as they want to roam and mate, sort of like humans, just without so much alcohol. So today it's to write public comments to the National Park Service. That's what we're going to help you do with a few simple links. Oh, and it's funny, this is cropped. So in 2 easy steps, says these guys. The antlers give them away as boys, by the way. So, what the heck? We're missing slides here. Okay, step 1 of 2. And I think Lisa or myself will put these links in the chat as well, and they're on the IDA website. But if you do nothing else, you can find everything you need. Yes, folks, everything you need at idausa.org/elk. So that's the main elk page, and it's now, thanks to the wonderful tech folks, thank you, Itamar, in Defense of Animals, the urgent submit your comment now to remove the Tule Elk Reserve fence. If you click that hyperlink there, which is circled in red, to make it easy to understand, it will take you to another page that looks just like that. And that's the page we want you to fill out. So it's a form on the In Defense of Animals site, which is a lot easier to navigate than the, yes, you heard it again, folks, bureaucraties of the National Park Service website, which works too if you can get to it and figure it out. No fault of their own, but this is easier. And we're going to, the other step, the last step here is, well, what to say? How do I say it, Jack? So that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. But if you just fill this out and say, yes, alternative B, take the fence down, and by the way, I want the cows out too, you've done your work. And if you want to get fancy and you have the bandwidth to learn some more facts for this ongoing issue, my website has this page on it, where there's only, what, 2 there, 1, 2, but it goes up to 6 long paragraphs of more things to learn about the elk-cow issue. It's not just an elk issue, it's not just a cow issue, it's both until the cows are removed. And you can read some of that and ideally put it in your own words for what it's worth. And in a nutshell, that's it. So I thank you, Lisa thanks you, the elk thank you, more elk thank you. And thank you for your ongoing support for In Defense of Animals, for whom I'm consulting. You can donate if you want to support this campaign or any of In Defense of Animals' wonderful work. And that's it, you might guess, because it's here on the screen, idausa.org/donate. But the starting place for today, I'm going to close the screen down, is idausa.org/elk. Yes, that is it. So let me stop the share and come back to you in my virtual form. And I also want to say one other item, which is technically, the Park Service isn't asking for a vote. So even if we got 10,000 people or 20,000 people, as we have before, by the way, to comment saying, take the fence down, we don't want the cows there, and all these other problems about diseases spread from the cows to the elk and such, we still want to do it because we can take that data that's sent to the Park Service, which goes into federal public record, and extrapolate our own data from it for future advocacy, for the next big necessary step in the park, which is to get the cattle operations out. So typically at this time, hi Hillary, thanks for joining. It would be it'd be wonderful to see more faces and go back and forth on video and take questions and all that, but I want to repeat again the important point, which is actually, I don't know whether, Lisa, you've had a chance to, if you're not doing 4 of the things in support of me here, thank you. We want people to go to idausa.org/elk. And from there is a link to click. A link to click. That's called a spoonerism, by the way, for those who care about language. Click on the link and it'll take you to the form to fill out to make a comment. And if in addition you're ambitious enough and want to learn a bunch more rather than just listen to me say these things, to know more about the issues, we'll be posting a link also here on this chat to my own webpage, where there's a list of 7 different issues to bring up to the Park Service. And I can talk more about them too as well, but I want to hand it back over to either people or Lisa in a moment here, just keeping track of time and trying to keep this clipped. And then we're going to linger, I think, until 4 anyway. If people want to stay and chat, and I'm happy to do that. I love doing that. But I wanted to just get to the meat of this, which is to make a comment right now before the June 5th deadline. Yes, I'm repeating myself for people who've just joined, to the National Park Service, that we support their proposed alternative B of 3 alternatives, A, B, and C. And A, by the way, is to do nothing, B is to take the fence down, and C is to leave the fence intact and kill more elk and help the cows more. So B for boy elk if you'd like. That's what we're looking for. And it can be brief if you don't have a lot of time, and who does these days? Or if you do have the time, or you want to make the time because you care about this issue, do politely tell the Park Service a piece of your mind, which is you come to national, I mean, it's kind of obvious stuff. I assume most people here are engaged, but you don't drive to Point Reyes National Seashore to see more cows. If you want to see cows, you can see the rest of Marin County and Sonoma County and other surrounding counties. And now, of course, I was watching a seminar last night put out by the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, Mr. OSD, I call it, south of San Francisco, where once again the cattle industry is pushing their regenerative ranching non-science. That if you just move the cows around, magically all the problems with cows disappear, and it's wonderful, they'll heal the land. Well, that is a heaping pile, a steaming pile of, oh, what's the word? Cow poop. Let's stick with that one. Jack, you want to continue to talk about the elk and the Point Reyes comment period? Why don't we do that? These are the voices in my head, folks. Welcome to my world. I'm going to take a pause and ask Lisa if she has any comments she'd like to make or point me in any directions she would like me to go at this juncture. Have you any?
Thank you so much, Jack. Yes, I wanted to let you know that we did post the links in the Facebook Live and also in the Zoom. So those links are there, and you can certainly click them. And we also have, for those of you who came into our Zoom meeting with your video off, you're welcome to turn on your video if you'd like, so Jack can see you and we can interact a little bit. That'll be fun. We have some folks who are with us today, so thank you very much. If you do have questions, you can put them into the chat.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And yes, folks, what I would love to have you do is go into the chat, and I just reposted them again, the 3 links to share. Just copy those out. So when this closes down, you have them on your desktop handier to get to them whenever you can. And yeah, I kind of rushed through my presentation here because I really wanted to not go on and on and on. I'd rather do what Al Gore did when he was running for president. Call 1-800-AL-GORE and repeat kind of the skinny a few times repeatedly for people who are coming and going on this Zoom. But we have a raised hand from Christopher Cole. Let's see if I can figure out. Oh, anyway, Lisa, I guess I'm going to let you run it so I can stay focused, or as focused as I can anyway. I'm happy to answer questions, whether it's in the chat or whether it's live, whatever is the best way to do it.
I think I'm unmuted. There is a question in the chat, which I don't know if you saw, which is someone's asking if taking down the fence will cause more environmental damage, and I think that's something that I hope you can respond to. It's not from me, it's from somebody else in the chat, but it'd be great to respond to that. Thank you. Thank
you very much, Christopher. Great question. That one I actually know the answer to. Out of 100 questions that have come, I'll probably be able to answer half of them. But that is really simple, which is, and it's funny, I was listening to a Park Service representative talk about this yesterday when he got a similar question. So when this fence behind me comes down, let's have a look at that fence again. It's going to release this largest herd of elk to then move into other areas of the park and do something very different on the land that cows don't do. And I actually hold that for a moment. The difference between elk and cows, their effect on the land. But in addition, what needs to be done to prevent more environmental damage when this 8-foot barrier comes down is to prevent cows from going north. So this fence actually serves a dual purpose. It is harming the elk by keeping them trapped to the north, but it's actually helping the Tamales Point area of the reserve because it prevents cows very sweet animals. I love cows. They're gentle, big, prairie puppies from wandering north and trampling all this coastal native brush. Coyote brush is what's behind me you're seeing. And, I don't even know whether cows would eat that. They probably wouldn't, but they trample it and eat a lot more because they're fed a lot more, and they poop a lot more, they urinate a lot more, and that would damage the land. So interestingly, I'm not sure the relayed question you had there, Christopher, but when that fence comes down, what happens is the Park Service is planning to put up a wildlife-friendly fence, which typically means 2 straight wires, not this giant woven wire tennis court mesh behind me, which is impenetrable to any large animal. But we want it to be elk permeable and cow impermeable. So we want anything that's there. My bright idea, by the way, spread this one, is to cut these fence posts in half, not remove them, or remove every other, but then cut them down from 8 foot tall or 9 foot tall to half that height, take down the wire and complete the woven wire, and then string 2 individual wires, not barbed wire, by the way, and not 3 wires and not 4 wires. And I'm actually going to host probably a conversation with some other experts who will teach me about this stuff, but it's called wildlife-friendly fencing, which would be typically something about 18 inches off the ground, and then a second wire 36 or 40 inches off the ground, which is plenty to deter a cow from crossing. Cows are not aggressive animals or in a rut just trying to get across somewhere, but that allows little elk to walk through and larger elk and deer as well, black-tail deer in the park, to jump over. So that is a very long answer to a very short question, but hopefully I covered a bunch and spread some more of the information I've been learning through this journey in the last 3 years, advocating for the elk in the park and the cows out of the park. And if I get 20 more questions and answer them that way, we'll go till 7 o'clock tonight, which won't work. But
I
thank
think
you,
we have
Christopher.
Fleur. Fleur looks like she has a question. Fleur and Bruce.
Hello. I'm the communications director for Defense of Animals. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. I'm here with IDA volunteer Bruce Seltzer, and he has actually been in Marin County for 40 years, and he's had a lot of very interesting information to share about what's been going on in previous history, which maybe you wanted to share with us for our elk activists.
Yes, this is Bruce. I've lived in Marin County since the very beginning of 1980 in both Mill Valley and the last half of that 44 years in San Anselmo. And this controversy over the farms in Point Reyes has been going on for all of those 44 years. It's shameful. We know who is responsible for those farms continuing to operate, the owners of the farms and the political leaders in this area. That's not a large number of people. So if additional pressure can be applied to our political leaders, and just very diplomatically, just continue to press and press and press, we will get the results that should have been done 4 decades ago. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying your presentation immensely.
Beautifully put, Mr. Seltzer. If that really is your name, says guy with the name Gescheidt living in a glass house. Go ahead.
Yes, correct.
Of course it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. Fleur should have warned you. I've got a so-called sense of humor. But yeah, absolutely. It's been going on forever. And the trouble is, I mean, as we're seeing in current political forums, if you lie, but repeat it. Oh, ranchers are great, poor, or they're hardworking stewards of the land. People believe that because they don't know anything else. And, it's not like I hate ranchers per se. I hate the business of cattle ranching. And I also really am opposed to lying, just outright lying, calling yourself a steward of the land when more accurately the copywriter in me calls them sewers of the land, because they put so much raw sewage on the land. And by the way, just for overview here, in case there's anybody that's a little bit tweaked by some of this, the illusion that the industry wants to create is that you can have 3 or 4 cows in your backyard, or I'm just a small family farmer with 20 cows. And if you move them around a large enough piece of land, then, their impacts are absorbed. That's true. That's true. And you still, of course, are killing the animal, and I would say forcibly impregnating and all that. So, vegan activists like me will still set that aside in these arguments, or at least I will in this argument. But that's not what's going on at Point Reyes. And Point Reyes is award-winning dairies. It's funny, I'm going to hold back a little bit and not even name them. But you can't make a living with 20 cows or 50 cows. That's the story. You just can't. And if you want to move them around the land like regenerative ranching does, I want to do a zoom just on that topic. I really do. You need a lot more land. And that means more fences. And that means more irritation at coyotes and wolves and mountain lions. And God forbid a bear wanders into Marin County. You know, forget about the panic of that bear harming people, which it doesn't want to do. But ranchers get pissed off. Ranchers are opposed to wildlife. And I can even hear the voice say, oh, that's not true, Jack. I want so-and-so, so-and-so. Well, a little bit, yeah. But as soon as you have millions of cows, which is what we need to have the industry to support the current public demand for meat and milk, then you have a ton of cows. So I remember Jared Huffman, to your point there, Bruce, about politicians. He unfortunately, I mean, I don't think he's, I personally, I'll get heat from both sides on this. I don't personally hate the guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's actually an environmentalist, but he's politically compromised. But once, to Bruce's point, the political winds shift, and that's you folks on this call. Once the winds shift, well, guess where politicians blow? Where the winds blow. He hasn't spoken out vociferously against the fence coming down. He hasn't spoken vociferously out to support the poor, hardworking ranchers who are getting screwed, because they're not. They're being heavily subsidized to heavily pollute. Okay, jack off his high horse. Next question or comment. Hi, Deborah.
Thanks, Jack. We do have a couple of questions. Looks like we have, well, one, there's a couple waiting from Anita, who we'll get to in just a moment. We also have Jacqueline, who mentioned once the fence is removed, how do we ensure that the Tule elk are kept safe and protected?
Oh boy, the nature of questions. Great question. Simple question. The short answer to that, which is a challenge for me always, ask all my friends, get the cows out. The majority of conflicts in the park will come because of the cattle industry. Cattle industry don't want elk on their land, drinking their water in a national park, which by definition belongs to the people. Most people, I bet many people, even a few on this call, don't know that all the land in the park, including the 28,000 acres of Point Reyes Seashore, a third of it, of the 71,000 total acreage that's given over to ranchers, is still owned by the people. They only rent the land, and they get it at bargain basement rent prices. So they're being heavily subsidized, and they're still screwing the public and sewering the park. So how do we ensure? Get the ranches out is a short answer. There's a lot more. I could go into another 10 minutes of detail, as you guys can figure by the way I talk, hence my fast New York pace. But the short answer is we must now lobby once the fence is down, which is supposed to happen. The final announcement, by the way, will come in late August, is what I heard just yesterday from the National Park Service. Public comment period ends June 5th. They look at all the responses. They actually pull it out to see whether there's new information they forgot, more than they do it. They don't do a vote, but we make it a vote by having them receive 10,000 comments saying, yes, take the fence down, and yes, move the cattle out. So they know it has, back to Mr. Seltzer's point, it does have political effect when we the people speak up. We just have to do it in big numbers because, you know, oftentimes the deck is stacked against us.
Thank you, Jack. We do have a question from Anita, so let's
Who?
So for Anita, let's see if we can.
Anita, by the way, while you're getting her on, is one of those amazing animal rights activists who is making the wheels turn behind the scenes in Defense of Animals. I keep joking, without her, I mean, I guess someday theoretically someone could do what she does, but I don't think so. The wheels wouldn't turn without Anita. Hi, Anita.
Anita, you are unmuted if you'd like to ask your question. And if
Okay,
not,
sorry, it took a while for that to catch up and unmute me. So I have a question, but first I'd actually like to say something to Jack's point. Like for anybody who says, you know, oh, cattle ranching doesn't really impact wild animals. Think about how we here in the United States look at kangaroos and we go, oh, what adorable animals. They're so cute. People as children see them in zoos. But Australia is wiping them out like crazy because they compete with sheep and cattle ranching. And the same thing is happening to the wild horses there, except for they're gunning them down over there, just right out in the open. And so every single country, like you'd say, oh, Europe is so advanced with animals. No, they're killing all their wolves right now too. So every single country where people eat animals and involve cattle ranching, any animal that eats grass gets massacred. Any animal that preys on cattle gets massacred. So you have the animals that can kill the cattle, and you have the animals that eat the same thing as cattle, and they get wiped out, every single country, because the agricultural interests, form such strong lobby groups. So people on the one hand are like, oh, I love wildlife. And on the other hand, they're eating animals that causes like an incredible amount of harm to wild animals. And, you look at the United States government and you see the National Park Service, which enjoys like this, radiant sort of, warm and fuzzy feeling from the public. Oh, the national parks, and oh, I love the national parks and save the national parks. And, look at our alt social media accounts and whatever. On the other hand, there's another branch of the government, which is under the USDA, which is animal services, which are hired guns who just come out and kill all the wild animals who compete with agricultural interests. So on the one hand, you have the government, which the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, one of its jobs is preserve endangered species. So it's not we care about the animals, it's we realize there's not enough of them. They might go extinct. So we're going to restore their populations up to the point where we can turn over management to them and then let the state allow hunters to gun them down again. So anyway, so that's kind of my point about cattle ranching. If you love animals, please stop eating the products of exploitation. It's hurting wild animals. It's hurting domestic animals. It's hurting the environment. It's hurting human health. It's hurting a lot of things. Anyway, now I have a question for you, Jack. So you put up that really nice graphic, the art with the 3 Tule elk herds. Thank you. And so the one on the top has a fence keeping them in. I have a question. What is keeping the Tule elk into their quote unquote areas in your other thing? And why are they not having the same problems? I mean, I can see the one on the bottom right, like it looks like there's a lot of land, but the other one seems hemmed in completely by cattle ranching or water.
Great question, Anita. And I'm reminded you and I should someday co-host. I mean, it wouldn't be for everybody, but if anybody hasn't been to New York, but kind of like is curious, a way to take kind of a dip a toe into the water is to hang out in a room with me, or a Zoom room with me and Anita. Let us go full bore and see whether you find that exciting or terrifying. So I just appreciate another quick. So it's another wonderful question. I like to say, when I have more space to do so, there are no free-ranging herds of elk at Point Reyes Seashore. At the moment, there are artificial limits, again, because of the cattle industry, even though not the herds up there, but the herd there and the herd there. As you can see, well, they don't want, I mean, sometimes they wander into cattle areas, but it's frowned upon. And we were just discussing this last night, or I should say, the Park Service was just saying, even with the fence coming down, they reserve the right to manage the elk. And that includes, another quote, I love air quotes, lethal management. They've set arbitrary numbers for the Drake's Beach herd, which is this one down here near Drake's Estero and Drake's Beach, at 140 elk. Should it rise above, at the moment, the regulations for the National Park Service allow them to shoot elk. Now, they said very cagily and politically, they have not done so. At other times, they've said equally cagily, they have no plans to do so. But they can. And that's another public comment area, which is on my website, on the page. It's in the link that's in the chat. And also, I can just tell you, but who's going to remember everything I say, because there's so much coming at you. But we want to say no lethal management of any elk in the park. It's not what the park is for. And by the way, I even can guess the next, well, then won't there be an overpopulation of elk? It's like, maybe in 10 years from now, first remove 4,500 cows, and then worry about the 700 elk exploding into 1,000 or 2,000. We wish that would be a wonderful problem to have. Because of course there are no packs of wolves and other large aggressive predators in large numbers to do what would happen in a really wild, larger place like Yosemite or something. But they're not fully free. The numbers would be increasing in these two herds down here, the two lower herds there, if not for the cattle ranches being nearby and not wanting them there. So that's the short answer to a very interesting answered question.
So one other thing, wouldn't we want then for there to be some sort of wild animal corridor of greenery that would connect in other words, in the center, there's all this cattle ranching, and I haven't been there, so I'm not really sure how fenced in each area is and how much like the herd, the Drake speech herd. I assume from this graphic that they're trapped.
So
there
here's a short...
by cattle ranching, like fencing that's not quite the same. Otherwise they'd have to jump into the ocean to get, to
Here's a short answer. I can answer this one real quickly. Here's the answer to how to, repair the park and rewild and have the elk herds intermingle, which we want them to do for genetic
Get rid of
diversity.
the cattle ranching, yes.
Get rid of the cattle ranching. Whoopsie. What was that? Get rid of the cattle ranching. Make all that brown stuff go away. So it's all yellow area. The elk, you know what? Let me drive this point home. Who is best able to manage the Tule elk? Answer from animal lovers out there in IDA world?
Wolves.
Elk. They don't.
Wolves.
Well, introducing wolves is something we talk about, but that's a whole nother conversation, which would be fun to have with a group of in Defense of Animals folks. But it would. That's another question. Right now, cattle out would then open up the corridors for these animals, and they could wander anywhere they wanted to. Even though people say, well, won't they wander over outside the park here? This hump of cattle here is Golden Gate Recreation Area, which is national park land, but it's not part of Point Reyes technically. And wouldn't they wander there? And that was actually asked of Dave Press, who's the wildlife biologist or ecologist for the park. And he said, well, we don't want them out there. If they wander in and out, that's one thing. But if another herd started to form out there, which might happen 5 years from now, I mean, it'd be great. Then the park would, at the moment, the regulations are to push them back in or to bring them back in. He didn't say kill them, which is nice. Excuse me, he would never say kill, lethally manage. But they want to keep them in the confines of the park. And again, these are great problems to have. Oh my God, the population is booming. They're not starving. They have water. They have access to more land. They'll know what to do. And then, this is a wonderful right for study and for future exploration of taking some subherds out and maybe moving them to other areas. And that gets complicated by Jonas disease, which is caused by the cattle infecting the elk. And then the elk are blamed for having Jonas disease, which can infect cattle, which is technically true. But the source of the problem is, once again, the cattle industry. When you take any animal, make them stand still, breed them for standing still, pump them full of food and water, and then take their milk, take their babies, kill them, cut their throats, and eat them, and cram them into small areas, or move them around the land in larger areas. Regenerative ranching. It's all bad news. In so many ways, my friend Hillary is nodding her head. She knows all about this, another fellow activist in this stuff, along with so many other people on this call. I'd love to do, a show of hands, please, in the non-virtual town hall. How many people would like to see a presentation, not just me yapping, but a bunch of people about regenerative ranching, why it's a bunch of bull? Yeah, exactly. It's just so important because last night, I actually couldn't take it anymore. I was up to here with the BS, watching the friggin' board members of Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District talk about how cattle ranching is wonderful. We want to open it up to the poor Markegard family that's struggling with their organic dairy and give them public land to pollute and degrade. And I can hear, whenever I say this stuff, it's the regenerative ranching folks are like, Jack, you are so full of beans. You don't know your stuff. We move them around the land. We have deer in the property. It's all wonderful. Well, you can't feed the nation that way. So last point, and then I'll stop. I'll get off this soapbox because I want to do this, which will thrill Leah, who's a new activist here with In Defense of Animals. We as consumers can do one thing every day, today, immediately, to fight back the empire known as the cattle industry. Can you guess what that is, folks? Don't buy their products. And I know there are people out there, my dear friends, who have cheese addictions. I get it. That was me for 50 years. I'm old. I'm over 50. Look at the gray hair. you just can find other substitutes, or even give it up and find some other foods that you like that aren't cheese. You just don't need to be eating that stuff anymore. That would immediately be the greatest reduction of your greenhouse gas climate crisis footprint if you care about that issue. And if you don't care about that issue, then do you really want to kill a big, beautiful cow just because you like the way something tastes that comes out of them? So eat less. I don't need to scare people off or make it hard on folks, but if you can do less of those products or none of those products, you're doing a great service to the world, to yourself, to the animals. Were we talking about elk earlier? I forget.
Yes, and we still are, actually.
And we still are. Thank you.
We do have another question from Perry L. And she's asking that when the ranchers remove the cattle from the area, where will they be going, the cattle and the cows? And then she asks, are they going to end up on factory farms? And then the real solution, she's saying, would be for the ranchers themselves to grow a conscience and go out of business. So just wanted to ask you the question about the
Sure. Well, I mean, the political reality is, apart from the idealism of, activists who get all worked up like me, nothing's going to happen overnight. So it's sort of, I've heard people who don't know any better ask an innocent question, which is, if we stop eating cows, what about all the millions of cows? What's going to happen to them? And the answer is, we won't be forcibly breeding them anymore. We won't keep repopulating. So I once watched Congressman Huffman of the district that oversees the park be asked a question by some obnoxious, loud guy in a yellow jacket. Oh, that's right, it was me. In a public forum, before COVID, if you remember, I'm kidding, there was no time before COVID. And I asked him, well, we shouldn't have these things in the park, blah, 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 blah. And he responded, kind of in the same arena of thought, which is, well, it's better than if they go down to Bakersfield and go to one of the CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations. And of course, he had the microphone, so there's no rebuttal to that when the politician, the congressman, has the mic. But the answer is, it's actually ecologically, I would say, probably better. Now, it's horribly cruel, but all of it's horribly cruel. And in fact, it's sort of, since I used to live in an apartment building in Manhattan, which is kind of a horrible place to live, although I miss the people, but it's, really stacked in, cheek by jowl, living on top of each other. Well, that's what a CAFO is. It's an incredibly efficient way to process manure and feed people, as opposed to spreading 10 million New Yorkers in 5 boroughs out over, a state the size of Utah or something. So the same with cattle. If you move these guys out, all this land can be rewilded at Point Reyes, which is the ultimate goal, to have it be a wild animal haven, as if it were a national seashore in a national park. It's a national park unit, technically, in the National Park Service. And then those cattle would they'd be sold to other places. They would live out their lives. I mean, ideally, they go to sanctuaries, but that's not the reality. They're going to live out their lives as beef and dairy cows. Someone's going to pay money for them. But then you don't replace them, and you don't forcibly breed them to have more. And the whole operation can gradually taper off as the public realizes, I don't need cows for protein. I now am willing to look at the reality that it's a really brutal industry. And if I had to wield the knife to kill this animal to eat it, a vast majority of people would not choose to do it. So, how much do you want to look at the ugly truth that we're all conditioned to be a part of? Me too, most of my life. That's the short answer.
So short and long of it, as they say.
Well, as I say, long and long of it. And I was going to say Ethan Allen has entered. Eileen Allen has entered the waiting room.
We have another question. We know that the government gives subsidies for farmers. Sometimes they are paid not to grow certain crops also. Why not pay the ranchers and dairy farmers not to raise the cows?
It's a great topic of discussion, which is, USDA subsidies, which are, of course, generated on a policy out of DC, because the big successful industries pay politics, they lobby, and the whole industry called lobbying with lobbyists that basically coerce the government. And I don't blame the government for that. I blame the coercers, the source of the problem. So yes, there's no heavy subsidies for broccoli, which is a healthier food, lighter on the land, and better for your body. There are heavy subsidies for milk and cheese, dairy, and beef. They're just, and of course, all the other animals as well. But beef and dairy, big beef and big dairy, as I call them, are really powerful industries. And we shouldn't be subsidizing them for one. And there are actually some, if a farmer, a rancher, excuse me, they're not farmers, they're ranchers, cattle ranchers. If they said, I want to get out of this business, but I need to sell the land and I need the money from the business, or I need to find, there are actually, I think folks here in Defense of Animals would know, there are actually a few companies that would help convert them to other vegetable crops, take up less land, less expensive to produce, and still earn a livelihood if you want to continue to be a farmer, not a cattle rancher. Short answer.
Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, just to take this pause. So if anyone's here and they have to go in 7 minutes, I'm going to post these things, these 3 links again in the chat. It's the purpose, the reason we're here is to make as you can see in the text behind me, help free the Point Reyes Tule Elk. Comment to the Park Service now. So idausa.org, idausa.org/elk. From that page, right at the top of the page, you can't miss it. There's a blinking asterisk. Thank you, Itamar and Fleur, to take you to another page where there's a form to fill out. And that would be plenty if you're willing to do that. It'll take you 5 minutes if you're focused, 25 minutes if you're like me. And in addition, the third link is it was a link to my TreeSpirit site for those folks who'd like to learn more about this issue, because it's going to be ongoing, and know the effect of cattle. I have a separate page for this. You can read the comments, and then there's a link back to IDA form to fill out, rather than trying to deal with the more confusing National Park Service website, which is functional, but, my word of the day, bureaucratic. So I'm sorry, Lisa, I cut you off. Go for it.
Yeah, you may have answered this one. You can let me know if you have, that if the fence is removed or modified to help the elk, will it help all the 3 herds? I don't know if we addressed that.
We didn't address that directly. Interesting, nuanced question, and good thinking. If the elk are freed, and I don't even like the word modified, technically that's correct, because there will be probably a strand or 2 of wire to prevent cows from going north, but it'll be basically invisible to the elk. They'll be able to pass through it, and they will. It will benefit the other herds, because then most likely the rutting bulls in the fenced herd, in the reserve, to Alma's point, will be able to wander to the other areas as wandering bulls will do in the rut, and mate with the other elk and the other herds, which benefits all. I mean, the fact that they're even kept completely separate is, again, because of cattle ranching. Cattle out, all fences down, and let the elk figure out where they want to go. So yes, it will be a benefit. And to the land, and to the public who doesn't come there to see cows, and to have a third of the park closed off to them with barbed wire fences, which block the people put up by ranchers in the olden days, and are, of course, a hazard for any wild animal that might get cut on rusty barbed wire.
Yes, and there's a kind of a part 2 to that question, which is it possible to get the cows completely out of the park altogether?
Yes. Next question. Is it possible? I came to this issue 3 years ago, which is where I met in Defense of Animals. We met up and liked the cut of each other's jib. And there have been people, God bless them, who did all the groundwork, as we say, standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm one of hundreds, and, scores of activists anyway, and hundreds of people who for a decade, 20 years have been pushing on this. Some of them beaten down by just, when you're alone facing the federal government and powerful political forces and economic forces, good luck, Charlie. But it's sort of like bringing out the vote. If everybody puts the word out, things can change for the better. So can we get the cows out? Yeah, I think it might take some more time, but right now there's a momentum to this as well, which is why I'm excited. As I said before, in August, late August, the Park Service is going to come back with their final recommendation, which is I'd be stunned if it's not, take the fence down. And that's from some guy named Jim Cotto, who's a retired Park Service attorney, a good guy, used to be a hunter, is now on our side with this. Doesn't hunt animals, he photographs them now. He shoots them with a camera only. And he keeps telling me it would be highly unusual for them to reverse course. They've made a big decision. The wheels of the federal government turn slowly, but when they turn in a direction, that's where they're going to go. Whether the ranchers sue is another nuance to this. It's possible, but I think unlikely and poor even economically for them to do so. They might enter the fray later when it comes time to get the cows out, and there's more political pressure to do that. but I think a lot of them are beaten down, and they see the writing on the wall, and they're even older than me, and they're just done with the business. Like, why am I doing this? Unless my kids want to inherit it. And I think there's only a few families in the park where the kids might want to take over and run the business. And, you know, to them, I mean them no malice, but I think the business is, the time for cattle ranching has come and gone.
Thank you, Jack. Actually, another great question from Anita. She's wondering, can the other two herds mingle, or are they kept in place?
So it's interesting. The short answer is a little. So originally there were just 10 elk, which is why there's a genetic bottleneck anyway. There's only 10 elk. For all the 700 animals in the park, they all come from 10 elk brought into the park in 1987 up at Tomales Point. That herd did well. The population was booming. This is before drought. And they decided to, I forget what year it was, 1990-ish? I should know that. But anyway, they moved, I think it was like 27 elk. Don't quote me on that either. And don't record this. Down, because I should know it, down to the Limantor area, a Limantor herd. And surprise, because we humans know so much about elk, some of the elk swam across Drake's Estero and formed another herd on Drake's Beach, which is, you know, wonderful. So can they mingle? Yes. Do they mingle? Maybe. When? How? Who knows? And for me, not being a biologist, not being very educated, I say let the animals figure it out, because I have I'm stupid enough to think that animals are smarter than humans in many, many ways. Go figure, right? So cattle out, fences down, let Point Reyes Seashore be more like Yosemite National Park, which is 10 times the land, and let them work it out. We still may need to have some management, which is to say we want to increase genetic diversity, or 10 years from now, if the population expands at Tule Elk, when we think, ooh, we can rewild some other cow pasture that has been retired, meaning the European imported cattle are out, stopping damaging the land for an extractive industry. We can have wild animals. Oh, I didn't even get back to it. I realized I made a point saying, how are cows and elk different on the land? That's for another webinar.
Well, thank you so much, Jack.
That was a short answer, Fleur. Go ahead, you laugh.
So thank you very much, Jack. We are, at the top of the hour, so we appreciate this special opportunity to hear more about what's going on with this campaign at this important juncture. If anyone has any other questions, I know Jack has said he'll be able to stay.
So, yeah, I'm happy to stay. Sorry, Lisa. I just see one. There's some Tule elk further up north, asks Deborah, south of the Oregon border. Some of those might be taken south. I got off the phone today with a guy named Rick Landman, who's awesome. And he is, like Julie Phillips, another Tule elk expert that I constantly ask the same questions again and again, so I might learn me something. And there are other herds, and we do want those herds to mingle. In fact, there are Roosevelt elk that are mixing with Tule elk and mixing the species, and it gets all complicated only politically. The animals are fine if humans don't interfere. But yeah, the more mingling, the better. Mixing and natural biodiversity occurs when man stops interfering, which is why I go on my other rant, which I won't do, I promise, barely, about invasive species, which is a huge, deep, confusing, complex sinkhole of debate. But my simple prognosis and recommendation is, as humans, let's stop killing things. Let's stop killing plants we say shouldn't belong. Let's stop killing animals that shouldn't belong, like the barred owl and the spotted owl. If left to his own devices, they make, guess what we call a sparred owl. The species mingle, constantly on the move. It's a natural, evolutionary, biological process, and we keep stepping in with for-profit motive to kill or cut down trees or wipe out forest where the birds are, to wipe out that species of plant because it shouldn't be there. And all we do is kill, kill, kill. Or as I say from my childhood movie time, Tora, 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 attack, attack, attack. Let's knock that out. Let's stop doing that. And number one thing, again, people can do is break your addiction to the yummy animal products we were all raised with, which I enjoy. I wish I was one of those vegans who smells a barbecue of vaporized cow coming out of a Burger King and saying, that smells horrible. I still say, oh, childhood. I remember when I went to my first Burger King. But I'm an adult now. And I put away the childish thing of just satisfying my palate because I now know that it's literally torture for an animal. Hence my being thrilled to be a consultant for In Defense of Animals, which is a whole group of wonderful people. Join them if you haven't already, who know how much all this matters. And that, you know, God, I mean, I'm totally in love with these two. Well, there's the same guy. There's two of the same back there. They're such beautiful, magnificent, gentle animals. And instead of going out and shooting them or killing them or fencing them or complaining about them, just to be in their presence is such a joy. I mean, it's an ecstasy. It's quieter. It's not as exciting as watching people kill each other in a Netflix movie, but it feeds my soul in a way that very little else does. And I hope it's the same for folks out there who do, or even that my words of passionate going on about things get you to say, yeah, maybe this holiday weekend I'll go out into nature. And whether it's a cockroach, thank you, Katie, or a cat, not so much in the wild, eating birds, but just go out and enjoy the beautiful animals out there. They're, you know, I'm not a religious person, but that's as close to God as I get, is being with those animals out on the land. Thanks, Lisa. I think I cut you off. You were going to say something.
I was going to share another question, which is, do you think that we are going to have the time to help the trapped elks before more of them sadly die from starvation and thirst?
Great final question. If that's, well, this may not be the final question, but absolutely. In fact, I think right now they have a lot of food and water. We had a rainy winter in California. We haven't had a hot summer. I mean, it's not summer yet until June 21st, but we haven't had a hot spring. I don't know that there's a forecast for really hot weather. I guess it could happen, but I'm just kind of optimistic right now. In addition to the August decision by the Park Service to move forward with when the elk fence will come down, I'm guessing. I don't have an answer to that yet from the Park Service officially, when that would happen. But in answer to the question, I'm actually optimistic again. Once again, what a joy that the elk won't be suffering and dying in a fenced compound for another season because that fence will come down. And we will keep an eye on things. That's certainly what we do as part of our work and my work in addition with In Defense of Animals to, you know, be in defense of, you know, animals and keep an eye. And if the water does run out or we get brutal heat waves or whatever else, we would advocate for, oh, it's another point on this public comment period, which is we don't want them to refill the water troughs and tanks that were put in supplementally, in case we do need them. We could put more water in them. Just leave them there for now. Ultimately, I do agree with the Park Service biologist Dave Press, who said, you know, we want it to be as wild, I'm paraphrasing, we want it to be as wild as possible. We don't want to be setting up an elk zoo where we have to bring in food and water. That's no one wants that. We were just pressing them as activists to do that, and they only did it because we, the people, and we activists pressed on them to do it because they were saying, no, the elk are fine, the population rises and falls naturally inside an unnaturally fenced compound. Oh, no, you don't, boys. You don't get it both ways. You put up a fence, you've created a zoo, you have to care for the zoo animals. Now that they're on the side of right, and they're going to take down the fence and close the zoo by opening the fence and letting the elk out, they won't need to be cared for. We don't expect more suffering. Not this year, anyway.
Thank you, Jack, for sharing all of your wisdom and your enthusiasm with us. We've got people who are just grateful for your energy to help with this campaign. And of course, at In Defense of Animals, we are as well super grateful to you for all that you've done to help us so that we can help the elk.
Thank you, Lisa. I did want to answer one question. I know someone has asked, but they're shy about it. No Peruvian snow powder. No cocaine in this guy. Never. It was forbidden by my friends. I don't need the stuff. I was told, don't take cocaine. The cocaine is going to get a high and explode. So
this is all natural. Jack is
all natural. This is called go to New York.
And then land in California.
And then chill the F out, Jack.
Well, we appreciate you as you are, Jack. And we also want to thank everybody for joining today, because this is a big part of our actions for the elk, is to have these steps that we can take. And this is the time to do it. So thank you so much to everyone. Please share the links with your friends and family and other people who care about animals. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Jack directly, if you'd like, via our In Defense of Animals.
I'm happy to give my email, and we do that, the idea email, which is jackg at idausa.org. I'll type it into the chat because whoever writes anymore. Those people remember what a pen is? I'm not, you probably don't. Jack G.
So if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to Jack and we can continue this dialogue, and stay tuned for our Tule Elk Town Hall number 4. That will be coming up at the next step of this process. So
Thank you so much, Felisa. Thank you for navigating this. Thanks. Well, thanks to everyone who attended. I wish we could all be together in a real room, but you know, not at the moment. We'll take what we can get. Thanks to Zoom. Of course, we brought a lot of disparate people together who all care about the elk. Thanks so much, and please comment to the Park Service. You have a little bit more time left, but as they say in the on the Jerry Lewis marathons or telethons, do it now, do it today. Why wait? Thank you, Maria.
Thanks so much, everyone. We appreciate your energy and your action to help the elk.
Thanks, Susan Kirks, Gina Ness, and Hillary. I'm just seeing some names here finally, now that I'm not looking at what next is up. This is great. How many people are still, oh, wow. I was going to call names out, but I realized not everybody wants that. So I'll leave you be. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.